Okay, so Monday night we talked a lot about a variety of things, but the one thing I want to go over again is making catch trays. And then catch trays are the way I make them. It's very similar to making lids. So for Ava's benefit, I'm going to go over making lids. She couldn't make it to class, so we're going to go over that now. So for making catch trays, there are really two different styles. One where you make the catch tray or the riser separate from the catch tray, and then you put this on the piece, and then you have the catch tray here. It's separate. A lot of people like that. There are benefits to doing it this way. However, the demonstration I'm going to do today is where you make the catch tray and the riser all together in one piece. So it sits up like that. The benefit is the catch tray and riser are one. You're moving it around in the kiln. They move together. Also, you don't have to make two separate pieces. It's possible to make a riser and forget to make the catch tray. So this way you have it all in one piece. So, and then once I get the catch tray made, because it's a very similar technique, I'll go over making lids. So here we go. So I've centered a large mound of clay. I'm going to drill down pretty deep and make a nice thick cylinder. And then I'm going to take that cylinder and cut it in half with the sharpened stick. You could use a needle tool. I like using this because it separates that. I need a sponge. There we go. Now, for the catch tray, you just flatten this out, and you go right under that, and you pull this tray out, making it wide and deep enough to catch the glaze that would flow off the piece. And on the riser in the center, I take my finger under this little cylinder and pull that up. So I use as much clay as I can. We don't want to throw a bunch of clay away. This riser, while it can be used a second time, we just use ours once. So let's just say I'm making a catch tray that's this diameter, and so that's too wide. So I'm going to just bring it in a tiny bit more, make sure it's nice and flat on the top, and then measure it one more time, and then I leave it just a tiny bit wider than I need it, because when I dry this, it's going to shrink. Okay, so that's good enough. And I take a rib like this, and I'm just going to undercut that and create a groove for the wire. So take this under, and then I'll even that tray out and just kind of make the final shape. And I take this in here and make a groove, and that's where I will cut that off. Now to stabilize this, I'm going to use a torch. I usually count to 20, this because I run out of patience, but I'm going to heat this riser up until it starts to change color. You can see that it's turning color there. And I'll go on the inside, dry that out a little bit. And then I usually, although it's not absolutely necessary, I like to stabilize the tray as well. Okay, so now that that's relatively dry, I can take the wire, put it in the groove that I just made, and if you turn the wheel on, just hold one of the wires, it'll pull right through. And then you can lift it off and get ready for the next one. Now for lids, let's just assume the opening of the jar is this diameter. There's some controversy in terms of whether you use the calipers this way or this way. My preference is to use it this way. So I'm going to take, this is the inside dimension. I want the flange of the lid to fit down inside that so that the lid doesn't slide around, and I'll make a nice flange and then a rim on that lid. So the finished piece looks kind of like this right here. So I'm making, this is kind of like a catch tray, but it doesn't come up, it just flat out. All right, so just the reason I make lids that are more flat rather than having some shape to them is with crystalline glazes, they do tend to run. So if this lid was coming down like this, the glaze would just flow down and drip onto the piece. But because it's nice and flat, the glaze just hangs there. It doesn't flow down. That's why I'm able to get a nice clean glaze line, and it doesn't run down. So if this is the inside of the jar, I've taken that dimension, and we want the flange to fit down inside there. Now this is the dimension that the inside of the flange needs to be. So I'm going to first center this up here, and then I like to bring up just a little bit of clay and indicate how much clay I'm going to be using for the lid. And I just push this down. I'm making the inside of the lid, and I like to have a nice dome. So, and then because this is on a hump, if I don't push clay down into the center, it's likely that this lid is going to crack right there. Okay, so you can double check where the flange is. See, the flange needs to be that small. So I'm just going to stand this up and make kind of a cylinder out of it. And you do the same thing where you cut this in half. Now, this can be the part of the lid that comes out. And this is the flange that goes inside the jar. And just double check this. Okay, so that's pretty close. And I use, actually the one that I use is a little different than this, but I use a tool like this, but you see that this has a rounded corner. You really want something that's more like this, that has a sharp corner, because I'm going to make that place where the lid is going to rest. So I'm going to put this right in here. Now see that there's a nice right angle corner there. Let's just check that. Okay, now that's too wide. It would not fit, so I'm going to just push it in just a little bit. Okay, so that's still a little bit too wide. All right, so that should be just fine. Yep, that's good. Now if you leave this flange a little on the thick side, when it dries to leather hard, and if the lid doesn't fit, you can always trim a little bit of clay away and make it a perfect fit. So that's a good clue. Make this measurement as exact as possible, but leave this a little on the thick side so that you can trim a little bit away if you need to. All right, so if I had a chamois, I would chamois this edge right here. Right here. Make that nice and round. You don't want this edge to be thin, so the chamois can help round that and thicken up a little bit. I do like to clean this up, so I'm going to take the same thing here. I'll clean that up a little bit. All right, now the last thing is I need to take this lid off, and before I dry it, actually I'm going to dry a little bit first. I'm going to start by drying the inside. You can see it'll change color a little bit. And I'm going to dry the flange. And this coated lead here. And watch this part. As you dry this, it has a tendency to pop up. And if it pops up, you can always push it back down a little bit. And remember, with the crystalline glazes, you want this part to be as flat as possible. Now, if you take a side look at this, I'm going to cut this off. And remember, there's a dome to this lid, so a dome shape to it. I'm going to cut under it and almost completely cut it off. Okay, so there's the lid. And I can take my little wire and just cut off that small remaining portion. And I am ready to make the next lid. Now, on the underside, you'll notice there's a lot of extra clay there. When I turn it over, then I'll be trimming, and I'll trim it to kind of what you see here with that little ledge. So this is just my style. You could trim it nice and smooth, or I've got this little hiccup here, and that enables me to put two contrasting glazes, and the two contrasting glazes will not blend together because that ledge keeps the glaze from flowing. So that is that, and the next demo I am going to do, I'm going to be focusing on throwing a piece with an alt tall skinny neck. So stay tuned.